This is a Dark Illumination Report Extra with RJ Womack.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for another episode of the podcast. This is Brother Nero, aka RJ Womack, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. I really appreciate it. This is the Dark Illumination Report podcast where we try to help individuals who are living a devotional way of worshiping Satan better their lives and improve their practice. Today I want to talk about what I talked about yesterday and continue on talking about right hand and left hand path. Somebody pointed out, commenting on the videos, that the video that I posted yesterday, that right hand and left hand path have their origins in Eastern mysticism. This is correct. It is absolutely true. And it's not something that I even thought about because I don't think of it in those terms, because most people don't think of it in those terms. And when I said using the terms right hand path and left hand path are a Christianization of kind of like pagan ideas, that's exactly what I meant. These terms in Western cultures are not used in the way they're used to refer to Eastern mysticism or Tantra or anything like that. They're used to impose a monotheistic duality on Satanism or any other religion. In fact, they're used to categorize, people so that we can diminish their religious point of view or insult them or categorize them in a different way than ourselves. And that's exactly how they're used in Western culture. Most people, including occult authors, don't have any idea about their connection to Eastern mysticism or Tantra. So it is not inaccurate what I said as far as Western culture is concerned. But again, I do want to correct myself by saying they do have their origins in Eastern mysticism, and they are not Western things, and they are not Christian in origin, but they are used by occultists to Christianize occultism and to classify it in a monotheistic good or evil, dark or light sort of way. So that is correct. And that's the way most people perceive those terms nowadays. And one of the reasons we're trying to get away from these terms is precisely for the reason that I just talked about. People use them as a way to belittle other people's point of view. They use them as a way to impose their morality on other people. For example, most left-hand path occultists call religious Satanist right-hand path occultists, which is not true, because in order for it to be right-hand path, you have to want to give up yourself to the all. You want to give up your individuality, which, as most religious Satanists know, Satan doesn't demand that we give up our self-autonomy or our individuality. In fact, he encourages us to be unique individuals and to have our own opinions and our own ideas about things. Satanists don't surrender their will to Satan in an absolute sense in the way that left-hand path occultists tend to try and present this idea. And we certainly don't devote ourselves to Satan out of fear or out of a sense of obligation, in the sense that Satan demands it of us. He requires us to give of ourselves. He requires us to dedicate ourselves to him or swear our allegiance to him. We do it because we care about him, we respect him, we love him and the other infernal entities. We don't do it because he demands it of us. We do it because we want to. At least speaking for myself, that's why I do it. Because I realize that in my worldview, in my cosmology, I believe it is Satan that gave us free will. I believe it is Satan that gave us self-awareness. I believe it is Satan that gave us many of the seeds that led to the sciences we have today. It is him and the other demonic entities that gave us these things. So, in my opinion, they deserve to be worshipped. They deserve to be honored. They deserve to be respected. And I do this willingly because I love them and respect them as my gods. And if left-hand path magicians are too stupid to understand that, then they're too stupid to talk about religious Satanism with, because they're too ignorant and too full of themselves to understand the simple concept that we are not doing it out of fear. We are not doing it out of obligation. We are doing it out of appreciation. And Again, I want to re-emphasize this point. Satan doesn't demand that we give up our own individuality in order to worship him. And in fact, he encourages his followers to grow and evolve and change. The only difference between a religious Satanist and a left-hand path practitioner really is that we do not feel the need to put ourselves on the same level with the gods. It doesn't mean we're not the architects of our own destiny. It doesn't mean that we're not in control of our fate. It means that we choose to live our lives in harmony with Satan and in a symbiotic relationship, a equal relationship, a give and take relationship, so that we can have a relationship with the spirit world. We don't necessarily, it doesn't mean we don't evolve. It doesn't mean we don't grow. It doesn't mean we don't change spiritually. And it doesn't mean that we're a slave, a mindless slave to Satan. He doesn't demand these things. You know, most left-hand path occultists have a difficult time understanding that Satan is not just a replacement for the Christian God. He's not the Christian God with horns. He doesn't demand absolute obedience. He doesn't demand that we give our free will completely up to serve him. These are concepts that left-hand path magicians can't understand because their mindset, their idea about Satan is so limited. And they have him in this box, and they have this archetypal view of who Satan is, almost a Christian worldview. So they can't understand the idea that you can have free will, you can be your own individual, and still submit your will to Satan out of love and appreciation. Their mindset is so closed and so uneducated spiritually that they just can't understand the concept how these two things can be the same or be in the same place at the same time. They think either you're an individual with your own free will and your own self-worth, or you're a slave. They don't understand that both things can be true. They're not mutually exclusive. Anyway, I hope that helps give you an idea of some of the things that I want to talk about. The other thing I want to say before I close this episode is that Satanists understand that nature is neither black nor white. It's neither good nor evil. It is shades of gray. There is good and bad in everything. There is what could be perceived as evil in everything. There is what could be perceived as good in everything. Nature is not black and white. As I said, it's shades of gray. There is destructive and there is creative in nature. And Satan is a god of nature. And while he may be outside of nature and above nature, he is also a part of nature. So while Satan did give us free will and a consciousness that is beyond that of the average animal, because let's say the average animal, with the exception of a few like dolphins and primates, don't even have the ability to recognize themselves as an individual. If you put a dog in front of a glass door and they see the reflection, they don't understand that that is them. They don't have a self-awareness. And that is the thing that Satan gave us. He gave us a self-awareness and an understanding that we're an individual that other animals do not possess. Many other animals do not possess. And so with that in mind, he did give us something that made us special. So he is outside of nature and beyond nature, but yet he is a part of nature. So we as Satanists don't see ourselves in opposition with nature. We see ourselves in harmony with nature while being the master of nature through science and technology as well. In other words, we don't look at it, again, as an either-or sort of thing. We look at Satanists being people who are in harmony with nature, but also use our superior intellect as a superior animal, as LaVey would put it, to use nature and harness nature to our advantage. And again, these things are really difficult for some people to understand. They think you either have to be a person that's in harmony with nature, or you have to be a person who seeks to dominate nature. You have to be a person that thinks in black and white, and everything has to be in a perfect little box, and everything has to be categorized. But in truth, True Satanism is a religion of balance. It's a religion of spirituality. It's a religion of materialism. You have one foot in the spirit world and one foot in the material world. And that's the mark of a true magician and a true practitioner of Satanism. If you go too far one direction or the other, you're out of balance and you're not practicing Satanism in its full beauty and its full magnificence. And this is one of the things that I really want to get across to you. That's why in this particular tradition, I call it the crooked path. And the crooked path is a term that comes from, I believe, now I'm not sure about this, but I believe it originates with traditional witchcraft. I could be wrong. But the idea, one of the meanings of a crooked path is that as you go down the path and as you travel down this path of the serpent or the dragon, you're going to do some things that are considered good and some things that are considered evil. And you're going to sway back and forth between these two polarities all the time. And nature does that as well. That's why I say the crooked path, the shadow path, the gray path is the true path, because it's neither black nor white. It's neither good nor evil. It's neither focused on nature or the material world. It's all of these things simultaneously, just like Satan himself is all of these things simultaneously. The infernals are neither black nor white. They're somewhere in between. They're neither immoral or moral. They're amoral. They're indifferent to morality. If they don't have a human morality. They're ancient spirits that don't think in ways that we do. And so they don't have the social contracts and the social constraints that we do. They don't think in terms that we do. And if they do give in to our morality, human morality, it's because they don't want to put us in jeopardy. These entities are smart enough to understand, of course, because they're superior in intellect to our own. They understand that if they ask us to do something, they're putting us at odds with our culture and maybe putting us in danger, whether that's danger of being in trouble with the law or the authorities and jeopardizing our freedom, or whether it might put our life in danger. They understand that. And most of the time, they will not ask us to do something that is not consistent with our personal morality. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. And I think the exceptions to that rule become most evident when you're talking about someone who chooses to be a priest or priestess of the infernal or the demonic. When you say that you want to be a priest or priestess of the demonic, what you're saying is that you want to make sacrifices beyond that of the average Satanist or the average follower or the average demonologist, not demonologist, but diabolist. You're saying that you want to sacrifice your free will on a level that maybe another Satanist might not be willing to do. And that's okay. That's fine. And that's the problem, is that people don't understand that there's different levels of service. There's different levels of devotion. And unfortunately, in this religion, like I said, everybody wants to put Satan in a box. They want to say Satan's either a fallen angel or he's a pagan god, or he's or he's this or he's that, or the demons are fallen angels or they're pagan gods. They can't be both. They can't be both things. It's not possible that they could have been the fallen angels of Christianity and also the pagan gods of old. That's impossible. Why is it impossible? Because somebody put a category on them and said it's impossible? It's not impossible. If you think about these being eternal beings that have been around since before the creation of man, how is it impossible that the demons, the fallen angels, can also be the pagan gods of old? It's not impossible. The idea that it is impossible is a ridiculous notion. So let's stop putting Satan in a box and trying to categorize him and the demons in ways that we understand them and understand that they are beyond our understanding. They are eternal. And simply by the fact that they are eternal beings that are superior intelligence to ours, that makes them something that we can't fully understand. So therefore, they defy categorization. They defy being put into a box. according to our human understanding. And until we understand that, there's no point in even talking about this. That's the place we have to start from. Well, that's about it, everybody. As you can tell throughout this audio file, throughout this podcast, I've used the term Satanism interchangeably. That was not by design. It's going to take me a while to stop using the term Satanism, even though I'm dropping the term Satanism. So I just want to let you know that I'm aware that I kept using the term Satanism. It wasn't intentional. Part of it's because I haven't revealed the terminology I'm going to use for this new tradition. I have a particular name for the tradition and a particular term I'm going to be using, but I've decided not to use that term in the podcast until I actually start publishing material under that term, so that that way the tradition can have a unique name and a unique presence and have material printed under that name so that it can be promoted as its own particular tradition and its own particular religious approach to diabolism. So anyway, that's why I keep using the term Satanism interchangeably, because I'm not using the actual term that I intend to use in the future. But anyway, that'll be it for today. I hope you've got something useful out of this podcast, and I hope Satan will be with you and take care of you and look after you and help you along your path. And I hope that those of you who do agree with my particular point of view or have similar views to my own will consider getting involved in helping build this tradition, because without people, without individuals who agree with the traditions and want to see them preserved and like the ideas, no tradition can survive and thrive. So without you, it's impossible for this tradition to build into anything that will last. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Dark Illumination Report podcast. For the latest news headlines, show information, and more, go to rjwomack.com. That's RJWOMACK.